criminal case in the Anatomy of Murder film. The Anatomy of Murder. A criminal case was observed and evaluated during the study. The specific type of criminal case was a felony, a murder case. The exact title of the observed criminal case is The Anatomy of Murder. The film deals with a criminal matter, specifically a felony, first-degree murder. The reason why it was a criminal case is that Frederick Manion committed the crime of murder, which is a felony. The criminal matter was a felony, precisely a first-degree murder, because Frederick Manion killed the bartender with premeditation and planning, making it an intentional murder case. A view on the trial before a judge. I managed to view Paul Beegler's court trial before a judge. The view of the criminal case was fascinating to watch a trial in person and see how the process worked. Moreover, it was interesting to see the judge presiding over the proceedings and the lawyers making their arguments. Watching the witnesses being questioned and the evidence being presented before the court was an interesting scenario. To sum up, the trial on the criminal matter was a very informative experience, and I am glad I could see it firsthand. The facts gave rise to the proceeding of the case. The case was about a lawyer, Paul Beegler, in a small town known as Michigan, who took on the case of a United States Army lieutenant guilty of the first-degree murder of a bartender. In the 1959 film Anatomy of a Murder, a lawyer named Paul Beegler, played by Jimmy Stewart, is tasked with defending a man named Lieutenant Frederick Manion, played by Ben Gazzara, who is accused of killing the man who raped his wife Laura, played by Remick. Although Manion confessed to the killing, he claimed he did so in a moment of rage and did not premeditate the murder. Beegler believes that his client is innocent and sets out to prove that the killing was not premeditated but rather a crime of passion. The film follows Beegler and Manion's trial and the personal lives of both men. It is a gripping legal drama that ultimately ends in a surprising verdict. The relief or punishment that the prosecutor sought at this proceeding was the defendant's conviction on the charge of first-degree murder. The litigation phase that took place while in my presence was the criminal case trial. A resolution occurred concerning the question in the court's presence while I was watching. The resolution was a conviction of the defendant on the charge of first-degree murder. A description of one's impressions of the participants. My impressions of the participants were that the judge was very serious, fair, and solemn throughout the proceedings. The jury appeared to be paying close attention to the evidence and testimony. The attorneys were very professional and seemed to be very knowledgeable about the case. The clients were very emotional and appeared to be very invested in the trial's outcome. Security was present but not intrusive. The court reporter was very efficient and kept the proceedings running smoothly. The interpreter was very helpful in ensuring everyone understood what was being said. The social worker was very supportive of the clients and made sure that they had everything they needed. Experience on events that occurred in the Anatomy of Murder film. During the show, several witnesses were called to testify. The witnesses included the lieutenant's commanding officer, a psychiatrist who had treated the lieutenant, and the bartender's girlfriend. The testimony of the witnesses was crucial to the case, as it helped establish the lieutenant's mental state at the time of the murder. Both direct and cross-examinations were conducted during the show. Direct examinations were used to establish the witnesses' credibility and to get them to testify about the facts of the case. The cross-examinations were used to challenge the witnesses' testimony and discredit them. Demonstrative evidence was also introduced during the show. This evidence included the murder weapon, the crime scene photos, and the lieutenant's medical records. This evidence was important in helping to establish the facts of the case and the lieutenant's mental state at the time of the murder. Several objections were raised during the show to questions and evidence introduced. The most common objection was that the question was leading or that the evidence was irrelevant. The attorneys also conferred privately with the judge several times during the show. These conferences were usually about procedural matters. Estimations of how well each attorney presented their case. In my opinion, both attorneys presented their respective cases fairly well, however, each had different strengths and weaknesses during the judgment trial. The prosecutor had a stronger case, in my opinion, as he had more evidence to work with and could present it in a way that made sense. The prosecutor did a good job establishing the facts of the case and showing that the lieutenant was in a fit of rage when he killed the bartender. The defense attorney did a good job, but his case was not as strong since he had less evidence to work with and struggled to connect all the dots. The defense attorney did a good job of showing that the lieutenant had PTSD and that he was not guilty of insanity. Expectations on aspects of the court proceeding. The aspect of the courtroom proceedings most similar to what I expected before visiting was how the attorneys presented their cases. Also, the most similar aspect of the courtroom proceedings to what I expected was the use of objections. The most different aspect was how the judge and jury interacted with the attorneys and witnesses. I think television shows and other media do not accurately portray the courtroom setting and procedure as I observed. They tend to show more interaction between the judge and jury and more argumentative exchanges between the attorneys and witnesses. The respective attorneys effectively argued their positions. The judge and jury properly executed their roles. The physical environment of the courtroom lent itself to the orderly and professional conduct of judicial matters. The courtroom was well lit, and the furniture was arranged in a way that allowed everyone to see and hear the proceedings. The additional comments one would like to make regarding the anatomy of murder experience. I thought the show was interesting and informative, and I better understood the criminal justice system and how it works. I thought the attorneys presented their cases well, whereas the jury and judge properly executed their functions. I felt that they comprehended the proceeding clearly before them. I was impressed with the physical setting of the courtroom. Furthermore, I was incredibly impressed with the quality of the acting. Every single actor brought their A game and delivered performances that were both convincing and entertaining.